Hi, everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Kentucky Derby winner Always Dreaming, Preakness winner Cloud Computing. They will have their rematch in the Grade 2 Jim Dandy Stakes at Saratoga, the local prep for the Midsummer Derby, the Travers. Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will also handicap 2 Grade 1 stakes races for sprinters, the Alfred G. Vanderbilt handicap at the Spa and the Bing Crosby Stakes at Del Mar. Nicole Russo will take a look at the 2 important 3-year-old races this weekend, the Jim Dandy at Saratoga, the Haskell at Monmouth, from a pedigree perspective. JK's play of the day, a Saratoga Pick 3, the Timeform U.S. Spotlight, the 5th race at Saratoga. Craig Milkowski will look at the Amsterdam Stakes for 3-year-olds, and we'll have our best bets for the Saturday cards. Let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our horse watch segment. Each week we pick one horse that really caught our eye. We put them on our DRF horse watch, and once they're there, you get notifications via email when they record a workout, when they start, and from a results standpoint. I bring in Matt Bernier, I bring in Mike Beer. Matt, you've got a horse watch runner entered this Saturday at Monmouth. You've got Convivial, but who caught your eye last week?
I wish I could have shown you him last week, but I was at a wedding. Now here we are, so we're a little bit late to the party with Barry Lee. Barry Lee is a 2-year-old that broke his maiden on his debut for Horatio DePaz. We're going to take a look at that race now. He's by Violence. Violence so far has been pretty decent as a stallion. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see what he was capable of on the racetrack. But you see this horse. This was his career debut, breaking from the inside. He had featured Bullet Works leading up to this, and he's absolutely putting the boots to this field. He gets a 71 buyer. There's not a ton of pedigree, but the dam is a sibling to a horse called Summer Hit, who's a multiple graded stakes winner up at Golden Gate. I think there's a lot of things to like here. That final 3/8 of a mile, or I should say the final furlong in 11-3. I don't know where we're going to see him again. I would like to think it's going to be a race at Saratoga or some sort of stakes race, but they paid a boatload of money for him. I think Barry Lee could be good.
His trainer, Horatio DePaz, is a rising star in this game, and he does well with these kind of young horses. If you recall, he brought Recruiting Ready up to Saratoga, and that horse ran a bang-up race in the Saratoga Special. Perhaps we'll see Barry Lee make his second start in this year's Saratoga Special. Mike Beer, 2-year-old for you in New York.
Yeah, this is another 2-year-old, first-time starter here, debuting at Saratoga on the opening Saturday. Not as impressive as Barry Lee's performance that we just saw, but this is Bourbon Currency for John Kimmel. He debuted in a really fast-paced race that was taken wire to wire by a D. Wayne Lucas second-time starter. He's in the red there, coming through between horses. Didn't break sharp from the gate. He got outrun by the fast pace. I like that he was racing on through the stretch. You'll see right here, the horse who finishes third drifts over in front of him, so he has to go back down to the inside, and this horse races on pretty well to the finish here. He just misses third at the end of this race. I thought he showed something here in a race that looks like it could be pretty live. I think there are several interesting horses coming out of that race. This horse is bred to go a little bit longer anyway. Maybe he gets a little more distance for his next start. We'll see what happens.
I agree with you. That horse got a true education in that race. I like the way he was willing to finish down towards the inside. And as you said, that race looks live. Sporting Chance was the only horse in the race with prior experience. He set a fast-paced, blitzed the Pletcher favored first-time starter and kept on going. That's a race to keep an eye on, and especially Bourbon Currency. For me, it's an older horse, a 3-year-old, Takaful. Finally, Kieran McLaughlin got Takaful back to what he does best, and that is sprinting. Let's watch Takaful in an allowance race at Saratoga. He just went right to the front, and he just kept pouring it on the field. 22 flat for the opening quarter, 45-4, and it is up and away for Takaful, who wins easily against this field of older horses, and he earned a 105 Beyer speed figure. Now, he began his career as a fast 2-year-old sprinting. He won off and hid in his debut, and after that, Kieran said, listen, this horse is by Bernardini. He's got a distance pedigree. We think a lot of him. The money's in the long distance races, so he put him in 3 2-turn races, and Takaful didn't respond at all. When you see Takaful's name in the PPs next time out, just draw a line through those route failures. It's not what he wants to do. That's what he wants to do, sprint, and we may see him in the Grade 1 Allen Jerkins a little bit later during the Saratoga meet. Now on to some handicapping. The Jim Dandy's up next. Big afternoon of racing at Saratoga on Saturday. The feature, though, is for 3-year-olds. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 2 $600,000 Jim Dandy Stakes for 3-year-olds, the local prep for the Midsummer Derby, the prestigious Travers Stakes. And Matt, it's the rematch between the Kentucky Derby winner, Always Dreaming, and the Preakness winner, Cloud Computing.
Let's hope Always Dreaming performs a little bit better than he did when these two met up the first time in the Preakness, because Always Dreaming just completely dropped an egg for whatever reason it may have been, if it was the 2-week turnaround for Pletcher or whatever it was. He ran really well in the Kentucky Derby. We know that this is a talented horse. I understand his career best race came over a sloppy track. I still think that he's just talented. I think that there's something here. The question becomes, what price do you want to take on a horse? He's morning line even money. I would imagine he's going to be right in that ballpark on Saturday as well.
Mike, we talked about it in the Race of the Day preview. And again, folks, for expanded stakes previews of most of the graded stakes races, including Haskell's Sunday card, head on over to video.drf.com. The Jim Dandy is Saturday's Formulator Race of the Day. Free Formulator Pass performance is available on the Race of the Day event page. But we talked about it in the Race of the Day, Mike. Always Dreaming was so bad in the Preakness. It had to be the 2 weeks. You look at his overall body of work. He'd never run that poorly. We know Pletcher abhors running horses on a short break. Well, what are you going to do with the Derby winner? He was just terrible. Was he just bad because of the break or something else?
I don't have the answer for that. I mean, I don't know why he was that bad. I hesitate just to give him the 2-week turnaround as the only excuse for it. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was something else. Whatever it was, he was awful in the Preakness, but you know he's better than that. I mean, all of his races prior to that are a lot better than the Preakness was. I'm a little concerned that Derby was, one of those races on a wet track where he felt like he just had all the best of it that day, and maybe he took advantage a little bit, but I still think he's talented. And I like that in this kind of a short field on Saturday, around the 2 turns at Saratoga, I like that he has speed, and I just feel like Johnny V's going to send him right to the front.
He'll strut his stuff early, as well as stretch out sprinter Pavel, who was a very impressive debut winner sprinting in Southern California. That could put Cloud Computing in the garden spot, right, Mike?
Yeah, it really could. I mean, Pavel, you would think, would have to show a little speed, or stretching out from a sprint to a route for the first time, just his second career start. I was pretty impressed with his debut, but this feels like they're asking a lot of this colt just for a second career start, and I think you're right. It does sort of leave Cloud Computing in his really good tactical speed probably just in a perfect position. That's where he was in the Preakness when he was able to gun down Classic Empire, and we have that video. Now here he comes. I mean, I just love the way that he comes and gets Classic Empire in the stretch of this race. Classic Empire opened a clear lead on this field. Cloud Computing would not let him get away with it.
Cloud Computing might get a similar trip, as we mentioned, sitting behind the 2 speeds. He's been freshened up. This is the 3-year-old I think that you're supposed to watch, because we've probably seen the best race from Always Dreaming. We've probably seen the best race from Classic Empire. I'm not so sure we've seen Cloud Computing's best race yet, Matt.
He's only raced 4 times. I mean, this is a horse that's still very, very lightly raced, and Chad Brown has thrown a lot at him in a short amount of time. Keep in mind, he broke his maiden going 1 turn, going 6.5 furlongs. Then all of a sudden he's in graded stakes company going 2 turns against horses that are just, at the time, more experienced and better than him. He continues to move forward. I can give excuses for the 2 prior efforts before the Preakness. And I agree. I really think right now, I think he's the 3-year-old that, you know what, if he does what he's supposed to do and he continues on this progression, I think he's the leader in the clubhouse for 3-year-old champion.
Like Matt and Mike, I think Cloud Computing is the horse to beat in the Jim Dandy. But like many handicappers, especially on social media, I've been whining and crying all year long that these 3-year-olds aren't very good. There's got to be an alternative. I can't take one of the 2 favorites in the Jim Dandy, so I got to weigh out their opinion, and it's Giuseppe the Great for Nick Zito. Giuseppe the Great, I believe, is 10-1 on the morning line. He might very well be the longest shot in this race. I think the stretch out to 1 1/8 is actually going to work to his advantage, and Zito has sort of taken his time with this horse. He's stretched him out incrementally. We're going to take a look at his most recent race at Belmont. This was a bit of a disappointing performance in against Haskell-bound Practical Joke, but I don't think this race was run to suit him. As you see, there's not a lot of pace on. Giuseppe the Great was forced to be closer to the pace than he usually is, up close to moderate splits, and he lacks the punch. The blinkers come off for Giuseppe the Great in the Jim Dandy. Dandy, and I think he's just going to allow this pace to go, and the pace should be fair at the very least for him. I think he's going to come with a late run. Whether he's good enough to beat the big two, maybe not. The price will be right. Perhaps he can split these horses from an exacta standpoint. Cloud Computing, I think the horse to beat, a horse I have to use in multiples, but also use a little bit of Giuseppe the Great. Nicole Russo is going to preview the two big 3-year-old races this weekend, the Jim Dandy and the Haskell. From a pedigree standpoint, let's go to that segment.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington for Out of the Gate. And as you've heard, that rematch between Kentucky Derby winner Always Dreaming and Preakness winner Cloud Computing, the center of attention in the Jim Dandy this weekend. We'll also have the Haskell at Monmouth on Sunday, expected to include Irish War Cry, McCracken, Hence, Practical Joke, and others. A salty field down there. And while we've analyzed many of the horses in the Jim Dandy and Haskell at length throughout the spring as they took on those tests of the Triple Crown, it's also important at this time of year to take a hard look at the newcomers to the 3-year-old scene, with a lot of racing still to come, who has a chance to knock off the established stars of the spring. Let's start by taking a look at the field for the Jim Dandy. 3 other 3-year-olds lined up to face the 2 classic winners at Saratoga on Saturday. And perhaps the most talented of those, as well as the one with the biggest question mark, is Good Samaritan. The colt has made all 6 of his career starts on turf, impressively won the Summer Stakes last year at Woodbine, was very well regarded, finished kind of a troubled 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, has a couple of graded placings this year. Can he make the switch to the dirt? Strictly based on his immediate pedigree, it's kind of a tough order, although I wouldn't rule out him finishing, say, 3rd in the short field based on talent alone. Sire Harlan's Holiday's 2 best sons are champion Shanghai Bobby, who did all his running on dirt, and Into Mischief, who won his grade 1 on synthetic. Dam Pole Dancer did her best running on turf. She was stakes placed on that surface. Both of her winners are turf horses. This is the family of hopeful winner Sky Mesa by Pulpit. He's bred on the same cross as that broodmare. Champion Filly Outstandingly and grade 3 winner Wiseman's Ferry. So while there's this dirt form further back in the pedigree that he can draw from, and while Harlan's Holiday is kind of a mixed purpose sire, the immediate pedigree is slanted toward the lawn. Moving on to Giuseppe the Great, and I was actually a little surprised to see this one here instead of in the Amsterdam on the undercard. This one grade 2 placed, going 7 furlongs at Belmont. Kind of a sneaky good horse, but he definitely strikes me as more of a sprint to middle distance type. Sire Lookin' at Lucky's best runners include graded winner Made from Lucky, Derby runner-up Lookin' at Lee, as well as Accelerate, recent upset winner of the San Diego handicap. More speed on the bottom side of the family as Giuseppe the Great out of a forestry mare, who's a half to grade 3 winner Indian Ocean, and stakes winner Megan's Halo. The real surprise newcomer in the Jim Dandy is Pavel, who jumps right in off this debut win at Santa Anita earlier this month for Doug O'Neill. By a horse who could go 2 turns on the dirt in Creative Cause. His best runner for his first crop so far is Twisted Tom, who won the Tezio, was unplaced in the Belmont, and bounced back to win the New York Derby. Pavel, a half-brother to the very tough Cara Cortado, a stakes winner both sprinting and routing on turf and synthetic. Also a half to Hill Pay, a stakes winner on synthetic. I think Pavel's future probably lies elsewhere. Now, meanwhile, down at Monmouth, Belmont runner-up Irish War Cry is likely to vie for favoritism in the Haskell in a field that is expected to include the late-blooming Timeline. Undefeated in 4 starts, all by open legs, won the Peter Pan at Belmont, then rolled in the local prep for the Haskell to Pegasus. This one is a strong pedigree on both sides that says he fits with the best of this 3-year-old class if he keeps moving forward. Sire Hardspun was a classic place grade 1 winner, represented by long-winded horses like Champion Questing, grade 1 winners Wicked Strong and Hard Aces, also turf performers like Hardest Core and Hard Not to Like. Timeline's Dam is by Empire Maker and out of a Grade 1 winner. That's about as well-bred as a broodmare can be. And this is the female family of Blue Hen Courtly D. We don't have enough time on this show to list all the outstanding horses that have come from her pedigree, responsible for Breeders' Cup Classic winner Bayern, Champion Althea, and so many others. So Timeline, a very interesting horse stepping up and taking his shot against some of the best of the 3-year-old class this weekend. But the 3-year-olds aren't the only ones in action this weekend. More Grade 1 competition at both Saratoga and Del Mar on Saturday, and we'll be back to take a closer look on Out of the Gate after these messages.
The 2017 Florida Derby, Always Dreaming. They won it by 4 in the end.
American Anthem has taken off. American Anthem easily in the Woody Stephens.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Alfred G. Vanderbilt handicap at Saratoga. Salty sprint race. $350,000 is the purse for expanded stakes previews of most of the graded stakes races Saturday, Sunday, all across the country. We talk about each horse in depth. Visit video.drf.com. The number 4 AP Indian is the 5-2 morning line favorite. Matt, but not far behind on Travis Stone's morning line, is the 8 Limousine Liberal, and Ben Colebrook's done a great job with this horse.
Really has handled this horse perfectly, I would say, so far in 2017. The interesting thing is, recently in the races at Churchill, it seems like the path of least resistance, where you've got a really sharp horse and you've just kind of been settling for minor rewards as opposed to testing him against some of the better ones. We'll take a look at a run, though, against AP Indian. This is going back to last year. This was in the Phoenix Stakes. He's out there on the front. Keep in mind, this is the first time that he was sported with blinkers. AP Indian's in the red cap. He's going to eventually wear him down. There's a sneaky part of me that wonders if this was the race that took too much out of AP Indian in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Neither here nor there. Limousine Liberal, this was the first race that made me think he still got it in him. He ran so well up at Saratoga as a 3-year-old, and he ran well in other spots as well. This was the first race that made me think that he was going to get back into form, and so far this year, he's been in really, really strong form.
Excellent form at Churchill Downs. Maybe not the fastest races from a buyer standpoint, but visually everything you want from a stalker who draws a nice outside post position. Mike, you want a price in this race. I still think you have some questions as to whether AP Indian has come back the same horse this year. You want a price? You're getting one with Tommy Albertrani's Ready for Rye.
Yeah, I felt like the more I looked at this race, the less I trusted the 2 favorites in the field. Maybe, more AP Indian than anything else. Not that I don't like him. I'm a big fan of his still and think he's good. I just don't love his first 2 races this year. So I sort of wonder if he's the same horse. It sent me looking around for alternatives. I couldn't really find one that I loved, but I did go to Ready for Rye, and we're going to go back a while here to his win as a 3-year-old in the Allied Force. This is a wet track. He obviously likes a wet track. This is the fastest race he's ever run in his career, but he's been probably just as good as this race in several of his races since then. He's not a prolific winner, but I think he matches up well with these horses when he can get the right trip, and I think he can get the right trip in this race. There's enough pace for him to stalk from the outside in here. I was just sort of hoping that he could maybe get it done at a price here in a race where I don't love the favorites.
Nice versatile horse, Ready for Rye. Does it on dirt, does it on turf, does it on a wet track. Looked good in his first start of the year, and as Mike mentions, has that tactical speed where he can sit a good trip, because there's gas in here with El Deal and Green Grotto, and sitting with Ready for Rye is probably the horse they're all going to have to beat, and that is AP Indian. And let's go back to his most recent race. That's the Maryland Sprint at Pimlico. A little bit of a wet track for AP Indian. He was involved in a pace dispute perhaps throughout. Whitmore's going to come and eventually get him, and I understand understand Mike's point of view that maybe the AP Indian of old would have won this race, but I still think this AP Indian is pretty sharp, and I think he is going to sit a nice trip sitting third off of the aforementioned El Deal and Green Grotto. Good effort for AP Indian. He's a hard hitter. He's the defending champion in this race. I went for a bomb in the Jim Dandy. More logical horse for me in the Vanderbilt. I'll chalk it out with the 4, AP Indian. Let's head over to the West Coast because Breeders' Cup Sprint winner Dre Fong is back for his 4-year-old debut in the Bing Crosby. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Bing Crosby Stakes at Del Mar on Saturday. $300,000 is the purse for sprinters going 6 furlongs. We're expecting the number 5 Big Mocker to be scratched at post time. Matt, the story of this race is the number 2 Dre Fong, who just exploded onto the scene last year as a 3-year-old sprinter for Bob Baffert. He won the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but he's got to deal with a lengthy layoff and a full field of sharp horses.
Certainly does. We'll find out. Look, if it were anyone other than Bob Baffert bringing him back after this long layoff, I'd probably be a little bit concerned, but Baffert knows a thing or two about getting a horse ready to go. And in his most recent start, it was the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and he took on some of the biggest names that we had. AP Indian is just wallowing in third. You've got Masochistic, who, when he gets into a bit of a fight, he kind of says no mas. But you're going to see a horse come from the back. That horse turned into Mind Your Biscuit. So Dre Fong did some good things. I'm still stunned about his pedigree. Gio Ponte turned out a Breeders' Cup Sprint winner.
Sometimes these freaks, they can do anything despite the pedigree, and Dre Fong has been freakish for Baffert. Big performances you just saw in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Matt, you mentioned Mind Your Biscuits. Who knew he was going to be this good? We knew he was good, but he came back to win what? The Malibu? Won the Dubai Golden Shaheen last time out? He's probably usurped Dre Fong because of Dre Fong's inactivity as the best sprinter in the country as of right now. Dre Fong, if he returns with his A-race or even improves a little bit as an older horse, it's a scary thought, but he's giving up recency to a sharp horse, and Roy H. was so good in New York last time out in the True North, and he benefits if Dre Fong gets hooked up early.
Yeah, that's the most impressive thing and the most important thing to think about here for Roy H. Roy H. has the ability to go, but he also has the ability to sit. And if Dre Fong goes and you've got Roy H.'s uncoupled stablemate in a race like this with St. Joe Bay, there's some other speeds as well. If they all line up, this thing could fall right into Roy H.'s lap. And you see him right here. He gets a 111 buyer. The one thing that you and I talked about in the expanded stakes preview, this race has not come back strong at all thus far. That's the only thing with a little bit of doubt for me.
But the speed figure is there. 111 buyer speed figure, visually impressive. Ever since this horse got cut, he's turned into a new one. He gets a little bit of pace in the Bing Crosby. He's going to be tough. But we have the same opinion in here. Tell the folks where we're going.
Ransom the Moon for Phil D'Amato. This is a horse, for the longest time, he was in Canada running on synthetic, running on turf. Phil D'Amato gets him, puts him right onto dirt, and they go one turn with him going shorter. Most recently in the San Carlos, I thought he ran his eyeballs out. Unfortunately, he happened to run into Danzing Candy, who's down on the inside, and these two just go off and they put on a bit of a show. You'll see Coastline. Coastline could be very important in this race in the Bing Crosby as well, because he is also entered and he figures to be a pacemaker as well. Ransom the Moon, I don't know what else there is to say. He ran big here. Hopefully he can turn the tables on Saturday.
He just couldn't get by that sharp Danzing Candy, but he has been a revelation for Phil D'Amato ever since he switched to dirt. He started his career basically in Canada, where he has to run on either turf or synthetic. He's getting an opportunity now on dirt. He has responded with several fast races, and I think he's going to get the right pace scenario. I think that Ransom the Moon, like Matt, is coming into his own at the right time, and in a race that features big names like Dre Fong and Roy H., he should offer a nice price. JK's got his play of the day. It's a Saratoga Pick 3, and then our Timeform U.S. Spotlight. Craig Milkowski's going to take a look at the Amsterdam Stakes at Saratoga. Let's go to those segments.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Back from sunny Del Mar, but I'm going to be getting back on a plane tomorrow to head back out for the Del Mar Handicapping Challenge, so wish me luck out there. For the Pick 3 play today, I'm going to focus on Saratoga. You ask why I'm playing the Pick 3, why not the Pick 4? I think a lot of times we get sucked into playing big multi-race bets, Pick 4s, Pick 5s, and Pick 6s. When we don't have a lot of opinions surrounding some of the other races, we can kind of pare it down into a Pick 3, and that's what I decided to do here with this situation. We're going to start in the Vanderbilt, where I have a really strong opinion. I'm going to start off with a 6-to-1 shot, singled here, Birdsong. I've been dying to see Birdsong back around one turn. The horses run well going 2, but I think ultimately this is exactly where he wants to be. He's going to be rolling late. I think there's enough pace in here with Jorge Navarro and El Deal. Limousine Liberal drawn outside. Green Grotto. They should hook up in front of him. Julian Leparoux will make one run for Mary Lou Whitney. And I know they wanted to run this horse in the Whitney, and the fact that they're conceding and now taking a step back and looking for one-turn situations kind of solidifies my idea that Birdsong is really going to excel at one turn. Don't be nervous early. He'll be rolling late. And the second leg, we're going to use two horses. If you've ever watched any of these JK's Plays of the Day or checked out the DRF Players podcast with myself and Pete Fornatel, you know I'm a huge fan of Mike Maker, Long on the Grass. I joked that you could put me and Pete in a horse suit and we would win if Maker was training us long on the grass. So I'm obviously going to use Bigger Picture, the one horse who ran well in the Grade 1 United Nations last time at Monmouth, going a mile and 3/8, drawn inside, should save ground, which is a big advantage down in there when you're going that far. You know, everyone else is taking more steps around the 3 turns, and you're going to save a little bit of ground. And then Sadler's Joy is another one that I'm definitely going to lean on here in this spot, going a mile and a quarter last time in the Manhattan, closing into a slow pace. Couldn't quite get to ascend the extra ground here, and Javier's up. Not that Mike Smith's any kind of a problem, but Javier's definitely not a downgrade, and I'm going to use those two in this spot. Frame Conversation is interesting. I won't talk you off of that horse, but for my play, I'm just going to use the 1 and the 4, Bigger Picture and Sadler's Joy. And in the last leg, the grade 2 3-year-old Jim Dandy. This is a tough one for me. I'm going to use two horses, and one of them you'll understand. The other one you might be a little surprised about. I'm going to use the 1, Always Dreaming, undefeated at a mile and an 1/8. Didn't run so well after 2 weeks rest, coming back in the Preakness. Obviously, the Kentucky Derby is well publicized that he was on the good part of the track that day. I held that against him in the Preakness. I'm not going to hold it against him now. He's coming back off of a long freshening. Todd Pletcher can obviously get one ready at Saratoga, and I think that Always Dreaming is going to show that Derby form that he showed back in May and the mile and an 1/8 races that he ran leading into the Kentucky Derby on the Derby Trail. So I'm looking forward to Always Dreaming, drawn inside. I think he'll be forward from there, which is something that I'm looking forward to, kind of sticking it to these horses in a small field, not a ton of pace signed on. Hopefully Always Dreaming will be out there. I'm going to let Cloud Computing beat me. I think a lot of people are going to bet that horse off of his last performance in the Preakness, the Chad Brown factor. They remember that Always Dreaming didn't run well the last time they ran against each other. I would suspect that Cloud Computing is going to take a little bit more money than I would prefer, although Always Dreaming as a Kentucky Derby winner will likely be the favorite. And then I'm going to use a little bit of Pavel. I think it's interesting that the Redhams and Doug O'Neill decided to ship a horse out here for this race. Pavel was super impressive in his debut win, obviously stretching out. It's a lot to ask going a mile and an 1/8. We've talked about it before. I think Doug O'Neill really excels with horses going long because his training regimen is very gallop based. So he puts a lot of gallops into him, really tough gallops to get him fit to run long. His Kentucky Derby record should speak for itself. And if you saw somewhere on the internet, I watched a workout with Pavel and IRAP. IRAP is kind of the B team Derby horse for the Redhams, and Pavel outworked him twice in a row. And so I'm looking for big things from Pavel. I'm going to use Always Dreaming and Pavel. I'll probably use 2 tickets here. A little bit more of my investment will be based around the pick 3 ending with Always Dreaming. A little bit less will be based on Pavel. If you're spending $100, maybe $70 worth of it ending on Always Dreaming, $30 ending in Pavel. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US, the Chief of Speed Figures, for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. This week I'm going to look at the Amsterdam Stakes. It's a Grade 2 race run at Saratoga for 3-year-old sprinters at 6.5 furlongs. The race rating for the race is 113, which is pretty solid for a Grade 2 for 3-year-olds this time of year. And that's what I'm kind of going to use as a bench post of what these horses are going to need to run to get the victory today. Let's look at the pace projector first. We see it doesn't favor any particular running style here, which is actually the case in most races. I think we do about 70% of the races don't show any kind of flag. But we still like to look at, what we think is going to happen in the race. And what that shows is we got 2 horses that look to be pretty close on early speed. The first one is number 2, Coal Front. He's an undefeated horse trained by Todd Pletcher. He's won both of his starts pretty easily. And he did show a surprisingly, not surprising, but he did show more early speed second time out than he did first when he was able to press a quick pace And given his inside post position, it's probably going to be more of the same. He should be right up near the front. The other horse we show right next to him is Aquamarine, who's a horse I believe I foolishly picked last time out on one of these segments I did when he tried a route, and just he led early and ran dismally. The one thing that sticks out with Aquamarine is he probably is going to show speed, but his very best races come on off tracks. His 2 wins and his best time form U.S. speed figure both come on off tracks, either muddy or good. The two muddy races were wins. So I don't consider him a serious contender in here, just more of a pace factor. But if it gets dark and the skies turn dark and it rains and the track's wet, he might be one to add some extra consideration. The next horse I'm going to look at is Mo Cash, who's tucked in just behind those two in third place early on the pace projector. And he actually almost led wire to wire last time out in the Grade 3 carry back at Gulfstream, losing to a very tough 3 rules, a horse that ran earlier this year in the Fountain of Youth and the Florida Derby on the Triple Crown Trail, before he cut back the sprints, which is probably what he's best at. He did duel a little bit early through pretty decent fractions, and even though he's shown a bit behind, it wouldn't be a surprise given how he ran his last race if he was right up there with the other two. So despite the pace projector not really indicating a preferred style, I actually prefer the horse with the best late pace rating in here, and that's Toga Challenger. He has much the best late pace figure in here, and he draws what I consider a preferred outside post in one-turn sprints. He should be able to track, which just is a really decent amount of early speed, get a good tactical position, because while he does have that best late speed rating, he has shown plenty of tactical speed in the past. He's not a horse that drops way out of it. He lays 3-4 lengths off. And I just love his pattern. He got claimed by Rudy Rodriguez 4 races ago, and he's just steadily moved up in time for U.S. speed figures, and he finally got the win at a nice allowance race at Belmont. He's 7-2 on the morning line. That's made by Travis Stone. Does a great job there. And I think he's the one I'm going to bet if he's anywhere near that morning line. That's it for Timeform US this week. Now back to Dan in the studio.
Time for our best bets segment of the program. Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, you're going to the Spa.
Yeah, race number 2 at Saratoga, 1X allowance for 3-year-olds on the grass. A lot going on in this race. Some horses with some pretty good form on the way in. A couple of horses switching over to turf for the first time with big pedigrees. There's a lot happening here. The horse I want in this race is number 10, Benefactor. I think he's 12-1 on the morning line. Trainer change to Mike Maker. This horse has come back. It looks like he's improved as a 3-year-old, sprinting on the dirt, but I'm not so sure that this horse is really a dirt sprinter. I feel like he might be a turf horse. He's got 1 start on the grass. It was the only start as a 2-year-old at Belmont Park, and this is his race from last September. This is a horse, he got in behind horses in here. He's in the white colors, in behind the entire way. The flow has started in the outside. This is a good field. That's Ticonderoga taking over and winning it. He got stopped behind those horses. Watch him run here through the 8th pole down to the wire here. This horse actually regathers after getting stopped. I like the way that this horse was going at the end of this race. It makes me think that he is a turf horse getting back to turf for the first time on Saturday afternoon, and I'm hoping that makes all the difference. He's got post 10, he needs a trip from out there, but if he gets one, I think he can pull off an upset.
Matt, one of the major graded stakes races at Saratoga on Jim Dandy, Vanderbilt Saturday is the Bowling Green on turf. You've got 3 main contenders. You got your eye on one of them.
Sadler's Joy for me. You know, most recently in the Manhattan, he ran into a horse called Ascend, who he's going to have to deal with again on Saturday. We're going to take a look at the Manhattan now. The problem I have with this race, Ascend, I understand maybe he was still a little bit farther off the pace. There was 0 pace signed on, and Sadler's Joy had to come from last. I think this is a scenario where he gets an extra 1/8 of a mile to work with on Saturday. Watch the way that he finishes. I understand maybe he doesn't make up all the ground, but he finishes with a flurry. He's 3-1 on the morning line. He's not a horse that's going to get you rich, but I kind of want Ascend to prove to me that this is actually what he's turned into at 8-5 in the morning line. Give me Sadler's Joy in the Bowling Green.
I'll head on over to Del Mar on the Bing Crosby undercard. Race number 4, I want the number 1, Table for 3. I think this one's form's dirtied up by many turf lines, and I think she is more of a dirt filly. In her most recent start, a starter allowance race at Santa Anita going 7 furlongs, she was hung out to dry with a 4-wide trip. She tried hard in the stretch, finished second to the favorite in that race. She was entered earlier in the week in a tougher $50,000 starter allowance. Phil D'Amato said no mas, a better spot is this race, a $32,000 claimer. I think all she needs is a little bit of pace. She got a fig for that last race, a 73, and if she runs back to that 73 Beyer speed figure, table for 3 will be tough. She is 3-1, the second choice on the morning line. That's it for us this week. Remember to stay tuned to video.drf.com all weekend long. We'll have Sunday's Haskell card, the Haskell, several other graded stakes races, the Shuvi from Saratoga, big racing at Del Mar as well, so stay tuned to video.drf.com. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.